So then I heard of this guy. So this guy, this is Tyberos The Red Wake. I'm sure most of you know him already, but if you don't, he is the chapter master of the Carcharodon chapter. He essentially has Terminator armor and is never seen outside of it. He is the Lord Reaper of the Void, or Shark Dad. His chapter are actually the space sharks. They travel around in ships. Their homeworld, it's a fleet of ships. Not only is Tyberos big and strong and taller than everybody else, but he is super fast. Not only is he super fast, but he has claws that look like shark-shaped harpoons. And not only was he never seen, like I already alluded to, but he was hardly heard. And when he was heard, it was a soft whisper. Just how tall, you ask? Well, he was essentially at least a head taller than every other Space Marine.
I'm taller than you were then, though I'm not likely to grow anymore.
So for those that have seen him, describe him as the ugliest son of a bitch they've ever seen. He has dark eyes, pale white skin, and literally bones that are just protruding out of his face. So I don't know that much about Tyberos. It was just some facts that I kind of picked up pretty easily. But share your comments, share your thoughts on this specific character. I think I found the one that I want to look up more and investigate and find out more of the backstory and lore. Hopefully there is a lot to it, I'm not sure. Pretty fascinating character if you ask me. The fact that he's so big and scary looking and sort of mysterious really ties into what I'm all signed up for. So ultimately, just enjoy the reaction video. Have fun. I am. Stay tuned. Enjoy the show. We're going to get into the Craft World Eldar, which I'm looking forward to.
The first playable race we have for the Eldar are the Craft World Eldar and living in those Craft World starships I mentioned earlier. And each of them have their own kind of Craft World, almost like a Space Marine Legion. Each Craft World is in itself its own special kind of group. And the Eldar themselves are very fast and rely a lot on trickery. They are squishy, a bit weak, but they're very in tune as psychers. Tons of psychers across the entire Eldar population, and their weaponry and abilities are fast and extremely hard hitting, but of course rather fragile. Understanding an Eldar's brain is an exercise in futility. They are all over the place in confusion and trickery on a whole galactic scale. They fight weird, they think weirder, and Eldar in their own right really rely on this to keep their species alive. They need to think about deception and the strangeness of what they do if they truly want to not be immediately murdered and slaughtered wholesale thanks to their entirely small population. However, I must say that it seems like their population is getting slightly better. These craft worlds hold millions upon millions of people. And as they continually, reproduce and have their craft worlds expand, losing a few people in battle, while hurts a lot, they aren't really losing what's extremely precious to them. It's not like every single death means the death of their species. It seems like they're kind of on the upturn a little bit. They're still a doomed race being sucked into Slaanesh every time someone dies, but they are definitely doing a little bit better than they were before. Eldar are fast, cunning, and what they don't make up for in tankiness, they make up for in extremely advanced weaponry. They also call humans Monkai, which is something I mentioned earlier.
Monkai.
That is a derogatory slur for humans in the Warhammer world.
What's
why
equivalent
is it called Monkai? Well, it's because you can't, in your game, call people monkeys.
Okay.
On the tabletop, exactly what I said. Not very tanky, generally pretty squishy, hit like trucks and move at Mach 5. Fast, hit hard, die fast. Exactly.
All right, so the Eldar that are in the craft worlds that have escaped or whatever else, Slaanesh is still aware of them, right? That's the question that I have. Slaanesh is aware of them, or is Slaanesh actively going after them and trying to find them? I don't know, but interesting.
Exactly how it sounds. They've been good for a very long time, too. We bring only death and leave only carry-on. It is a message even a human can understand. Eldar.
Dope.
So, Drukhari. Let's talk about the Dark Eldar.
On today's episode of How Fucked Up Is Fucked Up. That's fucked up.
So those people I mentioned in the Webway, in the super deranged cults and the depraved people of the Eldar, in the Webway, they didn't quite get a hold onto them. Slanesh like has them, but it has them on like by the pinky finger. And they're
all right.
slowly being consumed by Slanesh, but they found out
That's my answer,
they
I
can
guess.
stave her off
They can.
by doing Slanesh things. The Dark Eldar are by far the worst, most horrifying, disgusting, depraved, and
love it.
brutal race in
love
all
it.
of Warhammer 40k.
friggin' love it.
These are entirely a group of people whose full purpose to save their species from extinction, to go into planets, raid them, and take as many slaves as they possibly can
don't love
to
that.
torture them
Don't
for
love that.
1, 5,
Take it back.
10, 20, a million years, because that torture will keep them from dying. They look very...
Could this universe get any more gruesome? It's so friggin' cool and fascinating. And that's the word that I keep using, is fascinating, because it really is.
BDSM style too. They definitely have a lot more spiky bits, and they have a lot more of that kind of leathery black look to them.
Hellraiser,
But
Cenobites.
Example.
I get it.
Let's say you are an upstanding Imperial citizen, living life on a regular planet. You get invaded by the Necrons. The Necrons will shoot you with a deatomizer, and you will be destroyed in a millisecond, and that's it. Not the worst way to go. You are invaded by Chaos
and quick.
Marines or something. You take a bolter shot to the head or a chain sword across your stomach, and you get cut in half. Painful, but not the worst. The Orcs arrive. They beat you to death. Hurts, but, you know, whatever. Tyranids, they eat you alive. It's pretty rough.
That sucks.
The Dark Eldar. The Dark Eldar. This is going to get a little graphic. I apologize. You pray you die. You don't. You are instead taken as a human slave. Your life
shit.
will be endless work and agony, 24/7. They will make sure you can't not die, as your pain satisfies them. They will hook you up to all manner of torture devices. They will inject pain-based like stimuli drugs directly into your nervous system. They will slowly run razor blades across your skin.
Oh my
they will
God.
fillet you and just pull out your teeth and your fingernails one by one. They will remove your appendages and your skin and wait for it to grow back so they can do it again. They will murder and torture and use the R word, it rhymes with grape, your entire family in front of you,
man.
and do the exact same thing to them. You yourself will also be rhymes with grape anywhere and everywhere possible. And this will occur for 20 years until you are no longer satisfying to them. And then you will be contorted, crushed, and twisted into some form of trophy, a fleshy trophy, or a ring, or a couch,
Holy
or a TV
shit.
stand, or perhaps a wonderful hat.
Or a
While
lamp.
you are, of course,
A lamp.
still alive and breathing, and you will become a moaning, fleshy trophy for eternity.
Wow.
And that
sucks.
is what happens when you are taken by the Dark Eldar. They
Yeah,
are
take
the
Bolter.
most depraved, most horrifying race in all of 40k. They
Wow.
look apart, and they do it so they all don't die. They are literally forced to do this, because if they don't, Slanesh's grip will get harder, and they will...
So I'm choosing the Eldar to look into more. Done. Eldar, hold me to it. I'm looking up the Eldar. I'm going to have a video about the Eldar. And obviously the other one too is Tyberos The Red Wake. Fascinated. Those are the two. Eldar, Tyberos. Tyberos?
will have their souls pulled away. So long as they keep doing this, Slanesh is like, you're doing good, man. You're doing solid. You keep that shit up, you elf-eared bastards. That's the Dark Eldar. That's the Drukhari. They are horrible. On tabletop, they're actually kind of like Eldar, but more extreme. They are even squishier than the Eldar, but they hit generally even harder. Fast attacks, skirmishers, really quick, speedy, like get around them, do a lot of damage, get away kind of stuff. That's most of the Dark Eldar. Look up the definition of grim dark in a dictionary. You'll find a picture of the Dark Eldar. And Sev from Republic Commando. A quote from Mr. Vecht. We are the lords of despair, masters of terror. Dread and agony are our meat and wine, and they are plentiful indeed. Dark Eldar. Let's talk about the Harlequins. Clowns.
Clowns.
What's the matter, Ed? Don't you want to have some fun?
The Harlequins
I don't mind
are
clowns.
a bizarre
People are
race
scared of
of
them. I don't really
They're
mind
demonic clown performers. They're like a weird mix of Sander Cohen from BioShock and Jin from League of Legends, but in a more clown theme. They're artists of death and perfecters of their craft. They do
Holy
not belong
crap.
to Craft Worlds or any of the weird
Holy
Drukhari people.
crap.
They guard something called the Black Library, which is this giant tome of never-ending knowledge deep
Heard of
in
it.
the heart of the Eldar Webway, and also guarded by their god named Kegorok, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He is the laughing god. But it's the Eldar.
There's more gods?
And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns.
All right, so I don't like interrupting, but I have to here because I have a question. How many gods are there? Because up until now, I have only heard of the Chaos gods. So those are like the 4. But now I'm hearing there's another god here. So what's the deal with that?
And these are the Harlequins, the Harlequin clowns. These are Eldar clowns, okay? So imagine the things that an Eldar, these depraved individuals, would find funny. And this is the god of that.
Wow.
It's a horror clown. These are gods of horror for us normal people. For them, they're like, oh, it's so funny. They're all dying horribly. Honk, honk. They're very bizarre and difficult to describe. They've escaped the ruinous powers of Slaanesh somehow, but their main thing is guarding that Black Library. And the Harlequins just... They're demon clown performers.
Wow.
They're barely any models on the tabletop. They're good in melee.
Those
They're
are really
demon
cool,
clowns.
Those look
I'm not
awesome.
sure. I got a quote. It is too easy for
They
an
look like they
Eldar to
belong,
embrace
though.
the obscene virtues of chaos, for Slaanesh is nothing more than a manifestation of the Eldar mind in its most wild and unconstrained form. Human morality is meaningless to the Eldar, and to the dark side of the Eldar mind, all life is to be expended at a whim. Cruelty and generosity are but the impulse of a moment. Beauty and sensuality are virtues that can be expressed in bloodshed just as easily as in song. To an unfettered Eldar mind, there is neither sanity nor madness, but merely a wave of perfect existence fulfilled by its own savage momentum. They're very strange. The Harlequins, Drukhari, Eldar, they are an anomaly that make humans seem completely easy to understand in comparison. They range from rekindling their civilization to horrifying murder and also clowns. They're all over the place, but honestly, they represent quite well and are rather interesting, especially with the whole Slaanesh murdering everyone bit. So, yeah, Eldar. Now, bugs.
Ma, they following me, Ma.
Bugs.
They
Tyranids.
following
I know Tyranids well.
These the bugs.
Because of Space Marine 2. It's all about Tyranids.
Tyranids. Now, you want to talk something a lot more fun, a little more simple than all this crazy Eldar shenanigans? Let's talk the Tyranids. They're bugs. Do they look like Zerg? Hell yeah, they look like Zerg. You want to know why they look like Zerg? Because they were actually supposed to be what Zerg were. Apparently StarCraft was supposed to be a 40k game in the beginning. Hence why they look so much like Eldar, Zerg, and the Imperium of Man. Like, kind of Space Marine-y. Those Marines, huh? They look a little bit Space Marine-y to me. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
You really fucked up on that one, Games Workshop, didn't ya? Tyranids are a giant infestation of unfathomable proportions. These are giant, extremely bio-advanced hive mind organisms that are basically all about absorbing as much biomass as they possibly can to evolve and mutate to be extremely potent and powerful and kill and eat anything in their path.
Right.
They are probably the least evil faction in all of 40k because all they want to do is eat shit. They want to nom nom the entire galaxy. They hangry and we food. Also, this Tyranid hive mind has a presence in the warp. In fact, Tyranids in their own right have a massive presence in the warp. They have a thing called the Shadow in the warp specifically, where when they are coming in to invade a planet, they have this weird ability to kind of cut off the warp on all the psychers on that planet. And how do you get help across the stars? Well, you need the warp because you need that for interstellar travel. So with people unable to call for help from the Tyranids, these are just easy pickings. And an entire giant Tyranid hive fleet comes out of orbit and just will massacre, absorbing all that biomass and turning them and all of their other Tyranids into even more advanced monsters. They come in so many varieties too, all based on what is important.
Yep.
Tiny little ripper swarms for scouting and having little dudes eat people up, to the Hormigons, Termagants, and Gene Stealers, all the way to the Hive Guard and the Exocrines and the Swarm Lord, to Hive Tyrants and their giant battle fleets, and even something as crazy as the Hierophant Bio Titan. The Tyranids come in all forms and sizes depending on what they require. They are extremely good at anti-biological weaponry. There is no way you can plague them or blight them. They have extremely strong armor, carapaces and such. Tyranids are nigh.
Where do they originate from, though?
And are pretty spooky when it comes down to how they handle all of their genetic material. Keep feeding them, they'll keep evolving. They keep on creating new horrifying organisms to spread across the galaxy. And you know what the most terrifying part of the Tyranids is? We might be surrounded. There have been around 6 or 7 Tyranid hive fleets, Behemoth, Kronos, all these different kinds of hive fleets, and they've all arrived in the galaxy from different points.
Oh, damn.
Different sections of the Milky Way galaxy have had different Tyranids come through. And that is horrifying.
Yes, it is.
Because as far as we know, we could just be surrounded on all sides by Tyranids. The only reason you may not hear a whole lot about Tyranids is because it's a little bit hard to have a bunch of story off of one hive mind genocidal monsters. All these giant bugs swarming in, killing and eating everybody and evolving. I mean, as cool as there are some cool characters, the Swarm Lord, Old One Eye, you can't really have a whole bunch of major character-based stories around them. As awesome as they are, they're simple. They want to eat you. They want to eat you and absorb your biomass. They are simple bugs. If you want something a little bit more complex, talk Gene Stealer cults.
I can have all the pot I want,
What's
I
that?
get around faster than walking, and wherever I need a seat, I can just sit on my balls.
Gene Stealer cults are a special brand of Tyranid that can slowly infect themselves into different kinds of society. And by infecting them, they can rise up to where they all pray and believe in these regular humans, pray and believe into their Tyranid hive mind gods. And these brood lords, and I think they're called patriarchs, all can turn an entire world all based into Gene Stealers. And these are called Gene Stealer cults. An entire hive world of the Imperium can be turned into nothing but servants of the Tyranid masters.
That's nuts.
Just by infecting them and screwing with their genetic code a little bit. They also have this cool Mad Max look, which is really neat. They are definitely one of the bigger threats to the Imperium besides Chaos. I keep saying biggest threat to the Imperium. They're up there though, because you, dingus, stepped on a bug in middle school. Asshole. There is a cancer eating at the Imperium.
I haven't heard of them at all.
With each decade, it advances deeper, leaving drained, dead worlds in its wake. This horror, this abomination, has thought and purpose that functions on an unimaginable galactic scale. And all we can do is to try to stop the swarms of bioengineered monsters it unleashes upon us by instinct. We have given the horror a name to salvage our fears. We call it the Tyranid race. But if it is aware of us, it must know us as nothing but prey. Tyranids. They're cool. But are they as cool as the orcs?
I'm really excited for the orcs. Tyranids, I know a little bit about the Tyranids because they're in Space Marine 2. It's really, they're the main enemy. They hit you from the beginning. They're there for a lot of the story in the campaign. They're in the operations modes. So Tyranids, to me, are just, like he said, nasty bugs. But they're kind of like monsters, too, because there were just so many of them. They were overwhelming. They didn't seem to be very bright or have really much going on behind them, except for what he's saying, which makes sense. They're just trying to eat you. So, I didn't really add anything there. All right, let's get to the orcs.
Red! That means I'm super fast!
Orcs, 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 orcs.
Love it.
Fucking love orcs. So, yes, the green monsters, the green tide, the green skins. These orcs, they are in fact a race in 40k. The orcs are as exactly what you expect them. They have archaic weapons, they're big boys, they have axes, and they have got big old teeth, and they want to kill everything, and there are so many of them. The only reason they haven't taken over the entire galaxy is they can't stop murdering each other. Orcs are so cool. Orcs don't have philosophy. Orcs don't have existential crisis. What matters is who's the biggest orc. You listen to that guy because he the biggest orc. He big orc. Big orc
like
knows
that.
best. You win through the power of imagination. Of all the races I have battled throughout the galaxy, the orc is the hardest to comprehend. They wage war with machines that should not work, care little for strategic gains, and are just as likely to slaughter each other as the enemy. How does one battle an enemy that defies all logic?
For sure.
As an orc, you're enjoying life. You're enjoying the life you're given. Your whole life and job and purpose is to get up and beat each other to death because you can. The biggest orc is the man who understands everything. He is the boss.
Who's
And
the leader?
Orcs have this really weird, like, big, dumb, stereotype British accent, which is just hilarious to me. Those are orcs. You fight. You like to fight. Your whole purpose is to fight. You wage war because you want to wage war. You got your boss over there, and you better listen to the boss, because if you don't listen to the boss will squish you and make you an example for the other orcs. And then you can't fight because orc dead. And orc dead can't fight because orc dead. Orcs. They scrap together machines out of parts that don't make any sense, and because they believe, they have the mental imagination that that machine will run, it'll run. If that
Isn't that like the
machine's out of
Necrons?
gas, you're driving that machine with your fellow orcs, and the biggest orc is behind the wheel, and you run out of gas, some orc behind you is like, oh, Zog, we're out of gas. And the big orc is like, no, we're not. I filled the fucking gas tank up earlier, and all the other...
How does that work? Isn't that the same for the Necrons? I heard that before, too, that they just believe in something and it's essentially true.
Other orcs are like, oh yeah, you did do that. And then you turn the fucking mech back on and it works again. Does it have gas? Probably not, but it works. The power of imagination.
Oh.
They paint things red because it makes them think they goes faster. They paint things purple because it's the sneakiest color. You wanna know why? You ever seen a purple orc? Didn't fucking think so. Orcs are also like ancient as hell. They're back in the Eldari time frame. But back then they were called Krorks, and they were much larger and scarier and far more intelligent. Now they're just orcs, and they're big, dumb, and they smack things. But they're pretty spooky. They're not very well armored, but they hit really hard. And it's called the Green Tide because there are so many orcs. There are about as many orcs as there are Tyranids. Maybe more. Who knows? But they keep on, murdering each other, so it's not too bad of an issue.
What's the number?
Orcs are entirely
What's the number?
comic relief.
Hard
Their
to say, I'm
stuff
sure.
is slapped together. That makes no sense. Their vehicles don't work the way they're supposed to, but they work because they think it works, because they imagine
Don't get
that it
that.
works.
I don't get it.
Orcs care only about who is the biggest orc, and they will follow the biggest orc. And then if they want to be the biggest orc, they'll challenge the biggest orc. And then when they go and they
Survival
issue
of
a
the fittest.
wa is just war in orc. They murder everybody and everything in this giant tide of green orcs who are just excited to be hitting something. They don't care that they're hitting Eldar or the Imperium or Tau or anyone in between. They're just so they get to beat shit up. That's orcs. And on the tabletop, they are a total coin flip, and they're really fun. I have never met a salty orc player. I have never met someone who plays orcs and is ever just a bad guy or that guy. Orc players have this kind of fun to them because when you play them, you are completely submitting yourself to RNG. So here's the thing. Guardsmen, Imperial Guardsmen, when they shoot, they roll a dice, and on a 4 up, they'll hit their target. They have a 50% chance. Space Marines, pretty good. They hit on a 3 or higher because they're well trained. Adeptus Custodians, they hit on 2s because they're just super well trained. Orcs, they hit on a 5 or higher. But if they roll a 6, they get to make another shot with anything, from the dinkiest pistol to the biggest rocket launcher. It doesn't matter. Half of their stuff will blow up on a whim. One of their medics, if you roll a 1 to heal someone, you fuck up your surgery and you just kill an orc. They're so wacky and silly.
That is wacky.
But the thing is if you roll well,
I like that, though.
you roll high, and you keep rolling high, you are going to crush people. And if you don't, you lose.
RNG.
I mean, that's what you get when you play orcs. That's what happens when you play orc. It's a coin flip. Which is why you can't be a salty bitch when you play orcs, because things won't go your way. It's just the roll of the dice. You're playing a dice game. But if you're going to have fun and you want to be stupid and you want to be silly, you're going to play some damn orcs. But on the opposite side of the fun part of this, let's talk about the Necrons.
Here we go. Maybe it'll answer my
The
question that I
Necrons
have.
are spooky, scary skeletons and very grimdark again. They have a much more fleshed out lore than before. Back in the day, they were just undead Egyptian space terminators, and they still look that way, but now they actually have a story. So way back in the day, you had the Necron tier. Kind of see a theme here: Eldari, Eldar, Krork, Orc, Necron,
sure.
Necron tier. So the Necron tier were this race of generally kind of shitty people. Not because they were personally shitty, because their lives were awful. They were ill-fated to a horrible existence of like radiation and a terrible planet they lived on, and everything just really sucked. Being a Necron tier was just really depressing. They really were looking for immortality. They were extremely reliant on the hope that they would eventually find the key to living forever and to stave off this horrible nature that they were thrust upon them, and therefore they could become the most dominant race in the galaxy. And they found this group. They're called the Old Ones. Imagine them kind of like the Forerunners in Halo or the Xel'Naga in StarCraft, right? These Old Ones were these strong, pretty much omnipotent beings, and they, of course, knew the key to immortality. So the Necrons went to them and said, please, show us your ways. And the Old Ones said, piss off. Not really, they were a lot more humble about it, but they did not want to share their secret of immortality with the Necrons. The Necrons, of course, took this very well and waged war with them, kind of under this united banner. The Necron different dynasties didn't really like each other, but under this one man, the Silent King, he thought the best way to unite his race was to do this giant war with the Old Ones out of spite for them keeping the secret of immortality to them. This was known as the War in Heaven.
Yes.
And this is actually like a multi-stage war.
Catan.
Because during this War in Heaven, they discovered the Star Gods, a whole new race of people known as the Catan, or the Catan. These Star Gods were also very much like Old Ones, almost omnipotent beings.
I feel like I know
and they
something.
too had the key to immortality.
Makes me
and so the Necrons went to them and said, hey, can you help us fight off the Old Ones? Can you help us kill these Old Ones, you, the Catan? And the Catan said yes. And in fact, we can help provide you with the immortality you so desperately seek. So the Silent King of the Necrons decided to make a pact with the Catan to allow them to accept this generous gift of immortality upon them.
This is great
But
info,
this,
Bricky.
of course, had been a horrendous trap, and the Necrons were dragged in chains to this biotransference where their
Tricksters.
flesh was stripped from them, replaced with nothing but a metal hollow shell, as their souls were ripped from their body and fed to the Catan. And the
kidding me?
Catan fattened up. They got chonk on the souls of the Necrons.
Nuts.
As this was their plan all along, they consumed the flesh and souls of the
so messed up.
Necron tier and turned them all into unwilling robotic slaves just to serve their will. And then, with their new-founded Necron army, they pointed their guns at the Old Ones, and the Catan continued their domination of the stars and their genocide, complete and full genocide of these Old Ones. The Old Ones did their best to stave it off. They even created other races, the Eldari and the ORKS, to try to fight off the horrifying Necron army and the Catan above them. But there was absolutely no possible chance for them. And the Old Ones were absolutely extinguished across the galaxy.
So
their
fascinating.
entire race completely removed. Full-on 100% genocide. However, during all this, the Catan, so just infatuated with their victory, started fighting each other for fun, for sport, and for small differences. Doesn't matter. The Catan, with these overpowered people, they're going to eventually hit each other at some point. And as they began just menially fighting each other, the Eldari and the ORKS actually started pushing on the Catan's borders a little bit, giving them a little bit of a run for their money. And as this continued, this is when the Silent King, who retained his consciousness, decided to leap into action and start a full-scale revolt against their Catan masters. And this revolt was bloody, as the entire Necron army was surged off to destroy these star gods. They were able to, just after suffering horrendous losses, were able to turn the tide of the war. and they took these Catan and they blasted them. Because as these star gods are unkillable, they were able to break them into thousands of shards and entrap them in giant stasis vaults to now actually be slaves to the Necrons. And with the Necrons having the entirety of their old gods enslaved to them, they realized that soon their race was about to be attacked by the overcoming new races, the Eldari and the Krorks.
That's
and
awesome.
so what they did is they retreated into
good foundation.
giant stasis tombs in order to preserve their energy and their strength for when one day they would be reawakened and they would be able to rule the galaxy that was rightfully theirs. And then some dingus Adeptus Mechanicus guy diddled with a green console, and now the Necrons are back and they see all these primitive races on their lawns and they think, get the fuck off of it. The Necrons are back, super advanced, and they are here to reclaim the galaxy that they so rightfully believe is theirs.
I love that, dude.
Now, at tabletop, they're a lot like that. Tons of undead Egyptian skeleton robots that when they die, they just get right back up because they keep on reanimating. Hard to kill, tons of crazy stuff. You can use the Catan themselves as units to fight with. It's pretty cool. The Necrons are one of the three major events in 40k. The Horus Heresy, the Fall of the Eldar, and the Awakening of the Necrons are all pretty substantial events. And the Necrons themselves are pretty dang cool as well.
Yeah,
Here's a
pretty
good
cool.
quote from
They're all
a wonderful
cool.
Dawn of War game.
Jeez, what's
Lucky
not cool?
creatures, as long last you have found the tranquility of death. I was like you once, clinging to life and blind to the truth. When I uncovered the truth, I too shuddered and paled with fear. Deep in these catacombs, I was remade. Here, my brethren slumbered for eons while the living grew like weed. My Lord knew this day would come. He had plans for us all. We would purge this world once more. So come, poor victims of life. We will grant you tranquility in these crypts. Kronos will be a tomb world once more. Necrons are also pretty smug. Trazen the Infinite especially.
This is still
little
your girl.
dickhead. But speaking of dickheads, last race, let's talk the Tau. The exact formation of the Tau Empire is not entirely understood. However, a long time ago, many thousands of years ago, in the 40k world that is, some Imperial navigation vessels were going around through different areas, and they saw a primitive race, blue people, smacking each other with sticks and stones. They thought, nah, dumb Xenos race, who gives a shit, and they bailed. Then this giant warp storm occurred right in that major area, unable to be breached. Then, once that warp storm 6,000 years later subsided, hello, those little sticks. Well, they decided to actually have no war of any kind and all just unite together under one flag of the Tau Empire. And now they have gigantic starships and Gundam robots and lasers and railguns and mechs, and they are here to ruin your day for the greater good. That is generally the Tau Empire. They have this kind of feeling of this homogenous group. All species can go underneath the banner of the greater good. The greater good is their idea of the fundamental increase and help of all. In fact, they are most likely the most like the Covenant in Halo, where they have the overarching prophets, being the ethereals, who are actually kind of dicks and like to pull at strings a little bit, but then you have all these different races directly underneath them, and they all work together in this big group as this large, foreboding race that tries to spread their weirdly pseudo-religious influence across the galaxy. The alien is not intrinsically evil. Do not hate him. Pity him, his ignorance. Seek to understand his differences and equate him with his inadequacies. Only then will he accept his place in the greater good. That is generally the Tau. And if you're kind of wondering like what their mainly big shtick is, well, they're all about big robots and mechs. They have laser rifles and rail guns. They got giant mechs with tons of missile pods and heavy rail rifles and rail guns,
rocket launchers,
and burst cannons and ion accelerators and void shields and all this stuff. And that is
pretty advanced.
Generally what the Tau's all about. But you're probably thinking, Bricky, this doesn't sound that evil.
No.
This doesn't sound very grim, dark Warhammer.
No, it doesn't.
And you'd be right. The Tau Empire really don't have that much of a horrifying, grim, dark style like everybody else. They're much more younger, new age thing. In fact, they're probably a lot less evil and a lot even better than they are now back in the day, because they liked having like that good guy faction. But a lot of us who really like the dark, depressing style of Warhammer didn't really like it that much. So, see, the Tau get a lot of hate, and a lot of that hate isn't necessarily unjustified. It's mainly from a tabletop perspective, but as you can see from all the visuals I've shown you recently, they don't really fit in the 40k universe very well.
Not really.
They lack that super dark, dramatic, kind of high gothic level the Imperium has. They don't have the weird kind of like grungy stuff that Chaos or say the Orcs do. And the Necrons and the Eldar have their own specific style as well. The Tau really do look like something out of Gundam. And while it isn't necessarily a bad thing, it does definitely not fit too well. There's that. There's also the tabletop problem. In tabletop, Tau are horrible at melee combat, but exceptionally good at ranged combat. So they blast everyone from really, really far away, and they have a million rules to make it so that it's nearly impossible for you to get into melee combat. So it basically just forces you to bottleneck the game into one specific gameplay style, which is gun to gun. And if you're doing gun to gun, they're going to win every time, because they're the Tau, and the Tau are really damn good at shooting. So it's one of those things that make the Tau generally rather hated, and a lot of different reasons for that, both from style and such. But this is actually one of the things I wanted to end this video with, is that the Tau, while they have their issues, you should not be discouraged from playing them. I'll make plenty of Tau weeaboo jokes, of course I will, but it's all generally in good fun. Anyone who legitimately doesn't want you to play a faction is an idiot, and you shouldn't be giving them the time of day. You pick what you think is cool and what you like. In Warhammer, especially now, factions get better and they get worse. They grow and then they fall.
So the rules just
only
change.
Be playing what you think is cool. You like the look, you like the models. If you're talking tabletop, that is what you should be going for every time, is what you think is badass, because things change all the time.
Is it a
but the
deep
universe
rule book?
of
Must
Warhammer
be.
has so much going for it. Every faction
I can't even dive into that.
has something interesting. Every character has a story, and there's a million stories to be told.
That's what I want.
The universe is vast and exciting, and while
Stories.
it is dark, depressing, and horrible, that is the damn charm. And out of everything I've told you in these two videos, is anything you could take away, is the reason why so many of us are so into this series and why we like it so much. Because with so much variety, such an expansive universe, and so much that can be done, you can find yourself having a pretty great time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it has been informative to you.
All right, so that was great. Literally expands on a ton of things that either A, I knew little about, or that I knew some about, but I was kind of off base, or introduced me to something I've never heard of. So I think the Eldar are fascinating. I'm going to do a deep dive on that because that interests me the most right now. Tyberos The Red Wake, 100%, not mentioned here, but that's another character, first character that I want to look into and do a deep dive. And the Necrons, the Orcs are fascinating. Who doesn't love Orcs? I mean, Orcs just in existence anywhere, not even just in this universe, is an extremely cool thing. And the Tau, I knew nothing about. I don't even think I really heard that term or that word. So I'll have to look into that. There's just so much stuff. But listen, at the end of the day, this is a hell of an experience for me. I'm glad I can share it with all of you. And listen, to anybody watching, I just really appreciate you following along. Like, who the hell am I? I'm just some dude in his basement. Turned on some pink lights and started watching videos and said, hey, I'm interested in Warhammer, welcome me. But you have, and I appreciate it, and it means the world. So leave your comments. You know I love reading them. I will reply to as many as I can. And again, if you want to join the Discord, I'll leave a link. Otherwise, see you next time.